into Opposing Viewpoints. I'm Tatum Everett, and for the fifth time in 6 years, the Minnesota Vikings end the season against the Chicago Bears. It's a big Sunday game, Sunday afternoon game against the Bears at US Bank Stadium. And here to preview this Vikings-Bears matchup, Vikings team reporter Eric Smith, and we've got Bears senior writer Larry Mayer with us today via Microsoft Teams, all working from home. Hey guys, how are y'all doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Doing
Good
great.
to see you, Eric. Yeah. Well, Larry, I'll start with you. Just a few hours ago, the Bears announced Justin Fields was on the COVID-19 list, or he's made it to the COVID-19 list. Moving forward, how does this affect the Bears quarterback situation?
Well, it's really a tough break for him because he's missed the last 2 games with an ankle injury, and he's finally back and healthy. And they basically said on Wednesday that they expected him to start and practice in full during the week. So it is a tough break. It obviously puts his availability for Sunday's game in doubt and jeopardy. With the new protocols, there is a chance that he could come back. If there's 3 different scenarios that he could come back. But like I said, it's tough, and you would have to tend to think that if the Bears need to and don't play Fields, they would go with their number 2 quarterback, Andy Dalton.
Well, Larry, as Field goes on the list, Kirk Cousins has come off the list. There's definitely a lot of quarterback chatter this week between the Vikings and Bears. So Cousins came off the list on Wednesday. He practiced in a limited capacity. Cousins obviously missed Week 17 against the Packers. And he will start Sunday against Chicago. Vikings head coach Mike Zimmer said that on Wednesday, that Cousins and all of the other regulars are going to play in the season finale against the Bears, even though both teams obviously are eliminated from playoff contention. So for Cousins, this will be start number 17 of the season for him. And he said he's excited for the chance to play, but we all know that it's been a disappointing season for the Vikings so far, in the fact that there's no playoff on the line, there's no playoff in the picture at all. Certainly has a lot of frustration for Minnesota as we head into the season finale.
It's
very true.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Larry. No, go ahead.
Interesting to me that the last time the Bears and Vikings played about a month ago, the Bears were missing all 4 of their starting defensive backs, and still the defense played one of its best games. I believe it was Kirk Cousins throwing for 87 yards was the fewest in any start of his career. So I have a feeling that I don't know Kirk, you guys do, but I have a feeling that he's going to want to kind of rebound from that one.
Yeah, that's definitely something I'm sure Kirk Cousins and the entire Vikings team wants back, despite getting that win. And both teams not making the playoffs, we're going to focus more on the bigger picture in this episode of Opposing Viewpoints. So we're going to narrow things down. And Larry, I know that this Bears offense has ranked, or total offense has ranked, in the lower ends of the rankings this season. But, there have to be some bright spots. So who do you have as your offensive MVP for the Bears this season?
I would say there's no question in my mind, while Darnell Mooney would probably draw some votes if you put it to a vote, because he's had a good year and he has a chance to reach 1,000 yards on Sunday, even though it's not what it used to be, I guess, before in the 16-game schedule. But I would say the Bears MVP on offense definitely is running back David Montgomery. He's close to 1,000 yards. He probably won't get it, but he's missed 4 games this year. He is the heart and soul of the Bears offense in terms of his determination, his tough running style. He breaks a lot of tackles. And he's also a dual threat type of back where he can catch the ball out of the backfield. And he's really continued to develop. He's a 2018 or 2019 third-round pick out of Iowa State. He's really played well since he arrived here, and has a really bright future as a future star in the league, I believe.
Well, Larry, there's certainly a few options for the Vikings in terms of their offensive MVP as well. Early in the season, it might have been Kirk Cousins. Dalvin Cook has obviously flashed and played well. Brian O'Neill might earn some votes too, but I think we all know the obvious answer is going to be Justin Jefferson. And the way he has played this year, he talked to the Twin Cities media today and said, I took offense to people who said I was going to have a sophomore slump and that I couldn't repeat what I did as a rookie. And not only has JJ repeated it, he's actually been even better than he was during his record-setting season in 2020. He has the most receiving yards by any player in league history through his first 2 seasons in the league. As we enter Week 18 right now, Jefferson has the 2nd most receiving yards in a single season in Vikings franchise history. He's only about 125 yards behind Randy Moss, and he said today that is a goal of his to get, obviously, in the season finale. So overall, an up and down season for the Vikings offense. They flash potential here. They struggle there, including, as Larry mentioned, in Chicago in that Monday night game. But as we look forward to the future, if you ask me, there's not a bigger building block to base this offense and this franchise around other than Justin Jefferson.
And to just bring it full circle, though, on Sunday, as you mentioned earlier, Larry, the Bears were without 19 players total last time, and one of those being Jalen Johnson. So I'm actually personally really interested in watching that JJ versus JJ matchup for sure. And speaking of those defensive Bears, let's try it on the other side of things. Larry, who would you anoint as your Bears defensive MVP for this season?
Well, there's no question to me, and I would say he's the overall MVP of the Bears this year, and that's outside linebacker Robert Quinn. He came to the Bears last year, signed as a free agent after having 11 and a half sacks with the Dallas Cowboys in 2019. So expectations were really high, and for whatever reason, he just didn't play up to expectations. He only got 2 sacks the entire season, which was the lowest of his NFL career. He vowed to rebound, and he has rebounded and then some this year. He has 18 sacks currently going into the last game of the season. He set the Bears' all-time single-season record that was held by Hall of Famer Richard Dent. So now he has 18 sacks, and he's one shy, actually, of his career high. He had 19 sacks with the Rams in 2013 when he went to the Pro Bowl and was voted All-Pro. But it's just an incredible story, the way he's rebounding. And people don't even realize Khalil Mack's been out most of the season, so he hasn't had that kind of threat on the other side of the line. So everybody's double teaming him, and he's still making plays. And another thing a lot of people don't really appreciate or understand or even realize is that he has excelled in every facet of the game. He has also played against the run extremely well. He's dropped into coverage on occasion too. So he's really had a complete excellent season, one of the best that we've seen by a Bears defensive player. And he deserves all the credit. He's spoken about this a little bit, but he hasn't really given much details, but he said that he's in a much better place mentally now than he was last year. He said he was in a dark place for whatever reason last year. I don't know if it was COVID or the situation or coming to a new team, but he's really blossomed, and he signed a 5-year deal, so he'll be back next year, and hopefully Khalil Mack will be back as well. But again, he's by far #1 MVP on the Bears this season.
Wow, that's bad news for the Vikings team moving forward. Eric, what about your defensive MVP?
Yeah, no doubt that Quinn has certainly rebounded from last season. The player I'm going to talk about hasn't rebounded more so that he's just been a steady Eddie, really, this season and really all throughout his career, and that is linebacker Eric Kendricks. Overall, this has not really been a great season for the Vikings defense. They rank at the bottom of the league in a lot of key statistical areas. The run game has not been great. The pass game has been kind of so-so. But Kendricks has been that energizer bunny. He's been that team leader. He's not a captain, but guys definitely look to him to be that emotional leader. Once again, Kendricks is leading the team in tackles, and that's something he'll have done every year, except for last year, obviously, when he got hurt and missed the final 5 games of the season. So the Vikings know they can always rely on Eric Kendricks. He plays an important position right in the middle of the Vikings defense. Obviously, at linebacker, he can play the run. He obviously excels against the pass. So going forward, he's still going to be a key piece of that Vikings defense that might look a little bit different next year. There's a lot of guys who are going to be free agents, but Kendricks is under contract. He will be back next year, and the Vikings will certainly be excited to have him back.
And on the flip side, that's definitely good news for the Vikings fans to hear. Well, this has become my favorite part of the show, and I'm a little sad to see that this is the last one we'll do this season. But Larry, during this time, we like to call it Hot Take Thursday, and it can range from lukewarm to scorching. So let's just get what is your hot take from this Bears-Vikings matchup?
Okay, well, I'm actually looking more big picture here towards next season. I'm going to go with ROQUAN Smith, the Bears inside linebacker, making his first Pro Bowl in 2022. He's been very deserving. He's also always at the top of every list of snubs. He's pretty much the heart and soul of the Bears defense. He leads the team in tackles. He makes big plays. He's got an interception return for a touchdown this year. And it's just been unfortunate that he hasn't made it. Bobby Wagner's a guy in Seattle that's seemingly always making it ahead of ROQUAN. He's obviously a great player, probably a future Hall of Famer. I believe he's an 8-time Pro Bowler. Micah Parsons with the Cowboys also made it ahead of ROQUAN this year. And he's kind of he's obviously a different linebacker. He's an inside linebacker, but he also rushes the passer a lot more. I believe he has 13 sacks. So they're different types of players, but to me, and I'm obviously biased, but even objectively speaking, I would say that ROQUAN deserves some Pro Bowl consideration. Last year, I believe he finished, fourth in the NFL in tackles and second in tackles for loss. And like I said, he makes other plays, interceptions for touchdowns, and he's a very hard hitter, sideline to sideline guy. Really a great player, and I'm thinking he's going to the Pro Bowl next season.
Nice one. I forgot about that big picture sense. I think, Eric, you, if you want to take more of a big picture sense, what's your hot take for this Vikings team moving forward?
I'm also going to take a big picture. I must comment on Larry's hot take in that Eric Kendricks is probably in the same boat. I've kind of given up on him, pining for him to get Pro Bowls, even though he probably deserves it as well. Him and Roquan Smith are probably in that same category for sure. But big picture, let's look to the draft. And, I know we have a game left, but, that's coming around the corner, probably before we know it. My hot take is that the Vikings will select a defensive player in the first round of the 2022 NFL draft. If the season ended today, I believe Minnesota would pick number 13, which is one spot of where they initially had last season at number 14, obviously before they traded back to 23 and took Darisaw at the left tackle spot. So a lot to be figured out with this team, with players and coaches. It's never going to look the same as we kind of go forward into 2022. But, everyone loves draft season. It's one of my personal favorite times of the year. And I just believe with how subpar the Vikings defense has been in a lot of key areas, like we've talked about, I think they need an impact player on defense. And that will be the pick and the guy in 2022.
Well, with their last 7 first-round draft picks, the Vikings have selected 3 defensive players, all cornerbacks. So this should definitely be a very interesting time leading up to the draft. It's funny that we're already looking ahead to that. However, let's take a look at Sunday. There is a big game as the Vikings return to US Bank Stadium for the final time this season. Larry, I want you to finish this question. The Bears win this game if?
I mean, my sense of humor says if they score more points, but I'm not going to go with that one for you guys. But I'm going to say if they score touchdowns, and it sounds like a stupid answer, but the Bears have really struggled this season putting the ball in the end zone. They rank 26th in scoring and 30th in red zone touchdown efficiency. If you look back at the game that they played and lost to the Vikings on the Monday night game, the Bears' first 5 trips into the red zone, or actually first 5 trips, let's say, inside the 21 of Minnesota. So one of them wasn't a red zone trip, but 5 trips inside the 21 produced only 1 field goal and no touchdowns. So that really says it all. They didn't score a touchdown until time literally expired on the last play of the game. By then, the Vikings already had the game in hand. So not settling for field goals, not turning the ball over on downs, but getting the ball in the end zone is obviously a key to the Bears, and it's been that way for a long time.
All right, Eric, last time with all the fun we have doing this, the Vikings win if?
Our last ride, let's do it. The Vikings will win if they can stop the run, and that's probably a win if topic that I could have used for every game this season, because the Vikings run defense was not very good this season. I think they ranked 31st overall against the run this season, and if you look at where the preseason expectations were, that is a disappointment. The Vikings brought in a lot of players on defense and emphatically said one of their main objectives in 2021 was to stop the run. But in 13 of 16 games, they've allowed over 100 yards, and it's actually 14 of 16 games they've allowed over 95 yards. So the run defense has not been good, and as Larry alluded to earlier with his offensive MVP, David Montgomery is a good running back. If Justin Fields plays, that's obviously an added threat on the ground with his mobility and his athleticism. But, the Vikings talk all season about stopping the run and wanting to control the ball and control the clock, and they really just have not done that. And this is their final chance to end the season on a high note. So if they can stop the run and let that offense, which has potential, but has kind of, sputtered around a bit. If the offense can keep the ball a lot and the defense can get off the field, that's their best way to to close out this season with a win.
And looking to cheer them to victory will be all of the Vikings fans gathered in US Bank Stadium for the final time this season. Maybe a little home field magic. We'll wait and see. But a big thank you to Bears senior writer Larry Mayer for joining us today here on Opposing Viewpoints. For Eric Smith and myself, we hope that you have enjoyed this show all season long. Stick with Vikings.com and the Vikings app for everything you need before the Bears and Vikings matchup on Sunday night, or Sunday afternoon, actually, a noon matchup. We'll see you there.